Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, brothers, sisters, dear friends. I hope you're all in the best health and iman. Today I have a special guest with me, my brother Hishaam. Unfortunately, we couldn't get Idris and Yusuf on today due to certain reasons, but we're going to go over it anyway. Hishaam, how
I'm
are you,
good,
man?
thank you, man. Yeah, it's odd circumstances, isn't it? But we're all coping well,
Yeah,
thank you.
sounds good. Yeah. What you been doing to like keep yourself
Keeping
occupied?
occupied, man. Obviously with Ramzan and everything, it's just
Ah,
focusing
yeah.
on ourselves, bettering ourselves,
Yeah,
and
100%.
enjoying the fact. It's not a nice opportunity, but enjoying the fact that we're with family.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot more chance to like sit down and just talk in with your
Exactly,
families rather than just being out all the time.
exactly.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. Today we're gonna talk about quite a deep topic. Usually we're quite light-hearted
Mm-hmm.
in some of the stuff we discuss, but today we're gonna talk about Islamophobia. It's a very um current issue, especially with Muslims. What we're going through all around the
Mm-hmm.
world, which kind of dove in today. Hisham, what if I was to tell you what is Islamophobia, like what would you give me as like your own definition?
See, I think that the definition is always going to vary from person to person because it's a lived experience. If you understand what I'm saying,
Yeah, 100%.
but I
Yeah,
think if you put it in context, and for the vast majority of people, it's a hatred or a frowning upon of an entire race.
yeah.
Um,
That's interesting you said that race because for me I think like one thing that I've always thought is like Muslims we're not like a race. I think what's happened is I think the media's kind of created us like they've kind of
yeah,
racialized
yeah,
us, if
yeah,
that
yeah.
makes sense. Because if you think about it, if you look at Muslims, you can go to a mosque, there's not like maybe not in this country, but like generally it's not like one dominant race.
Yeah,
It's not
yes.
like although the media's got this like idea of an Arab with a thobe and a hat on and stuff. That's not the
Yeah,
case,
no,
is it? It's usually a lot more
I'm gonna
diverse.
I'll append that then. I think a belief is a better way of saying it
Yeah,
because you can be anybody but have that belief.
yeah,
And that's
that's
what
true.
people it's a fear of of people with a different belief to you.
Yeah, that's true. Where do you think that fear comes from,
The
Muslims?
media, largely the
Yeah.
media. I think you look at, you could go back in time and you realize
Hmm.
that interconnectivity and social media presence and all of that, it wasn't there, and that hatred largely
That's
wasn't
true.
there. It may not be the main
Hmm.
reason, but it's definitely a catalyst.
Nah, it's true. You got a great point there, Sean, because if you actually look in history, a lot of the people who are Islamophobes nowadays, if you look in history, especially like during the time when Muslims were kind of in the golden age,
Hmm.
especially if you look at, nowadays we've got this idea of this hatred between Muslims and Jews,
Yes, yes,
um, which I think is also spurred on by the media as well,
yes,
in my opinion.
definitely.
Um, if you look at, for example, Al-Andalus, which was Muslim Spain, a lot of um, a lot of Jewish scholars they talk a lot about how they were treated better than the Muslims, but I think it doesn't suit the
Hmm.
narrative. You know what I mean? I think Muslims are like these barbarians, and they've come and conquered
Yeah,
conquered
yeah.
the Judeo-Christian lands. If that makes sense, it's mad,
So
isn't it?
I mean, I think that's a good point you made actually about a person or people having control over a view. So
Hmm.
back in that point, you have emperors, you have people who ruled over entire civilizations. Whereas
Yeah,
today, I guess you could, it's a bit more of a free world, but that ruling is almost dictated by the media.
yeah, that's true. I think that's a great point because the media essentially, even Malcolm X said it. He said the media is the most powerful tool
Exactly.
because it controls what people think. Unfortunately, I think we live in a world nowadays where people don't think for themselves
Exactly.
anymore. If
Yes.
I'm being
No.
honest.
I totally agree with that. Media is a powerful thing, and it influences people in ways I don't
Yeah,
think we can even quite comprehend fully. Because no one
yeah,
can, yeah, break down someone's mind like that. But it's a powerful. Words are a powerful thing. Media is a powerful thing.
yeah. It's crazy. I think one thing that we were talking about media, I was saying to you what before we start recording about an article that I came
Hmm.
across by the Washington
Yep.
Post. And the Washington Post, they went through 37,000 articles, that were related to Muslims. So they would have Muslims in it, etc., about Muslims, and 5% of all those articles were
There
positive.
you go. There you go.
That's incredible. That is like that. I thought that was incredible. Personally, I was like 5%.
That's a mental figure. But when you look at it, you break down each paper and each TV broadcasting station.
Yeah.
Who does it all trace back to? It's all that. It's that one. What's his name? Rupert. Is it Rupert?
Rupert
It
Murdoch.
all traces back to him. Now, I mean,
Nah,
if you go to Disneyland and you spit out anti-Christian messages, they will kick you out. They will kick you out.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that shows you the power that this one person has.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that's the thing, but like it's the media, they're supposed to be bastions of free speech, but when it's like they're very selective with that speech being free, if that makes sense. Because for me, one thing I've noticed is whenever if you look at these so-called critics of Islam, so you look at the new atheists, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, even Bill Maher, who's like what's it, that that talking host in America. Yeah, him. If you look at them, they say we're critics of Islam. We're critics of Islam. We don't hate Islam. We're just critics. But if you actually look at what they're saying, it's very Islamophobic.
It's all to fit their own agenda, really, because they know that if they tailor how they say stuff, they have a way of hiding behind their words. But then they know that people will be spurred on by what they've said or misinterpret what they've said, and it's not misinterpretation; it's deliberate placement of words in order to get people on their side.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's very true. People who are very like very they step into quite treacherous waters, if I'm being honest with that, because for me, like, I don't know, man, it just seems nowadays like Muslims, I think there's always been a scapegoat. The media has always been there's always been a scapegoat, you know what I mean? And I think not just the media. I think if you just look at like just in your countries, if you just look at like the Western powers, like America, they've always had a scapegoat, you know what I mean? Like in the 20th century, it was communism. And now it's Muslims. And I don't know if you've heard of Willie Clyde.
The name rings a bell.
Willie Clyde. He was the Belgian head of NATO. So during the end of the Cold War, he was the Belgian head of NATO. And he this is funny. He claimed that Islamic fundamentalism or Islamism was as big a threat as communism.
Wow.
So at the end of and that's what, 50 years ago?
Yeah.
Now 50 years? Yeah, 50 years ago. And the same things are being said, but now it's just being magnified to a whole new audience.
There's always this idea as well that it spans from dictators. People don't fit their agenda, don't fit their beliefs. But it's also to divert attention. You look at a lot of these people with hatred and they're trying to cover up what they're doing. So therefore divert hatred from themselves to other people. I think that's something you see in Trump nowadays, really, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think Trump, you make a great point, Trump. I want to talk about Trump, actually. Because if you look at Trump's campaign, like when he was running in 2016, and to a degree, I wouldn't say the same degree as now, but if you look at how he rode his campaign, like the wave, it was very Islamophobic. Like the whole Muslim ban, everything. And the thing is, for me, one thing that I've found is if you look at Islamophobia, why it's so prevalent in society, for me, in our society, in the UK, in America, and West in particular, is that it works. It's actually a successful form of prejudice. It bears fruit. Because if you think about it, if Trump won on the basis of being an Islamophobe.
Totally.
Now, if you look in this country, Brexit, the whole campaign on Brexit, there was very like Islamophobic and racist undertones. If you look at some of the propaganda that was being spewed by the Leave campaign, they were like describing the Muslim refugees as swarms. When you say someone's a swarm, that's a mandate for anything. You're dehumanizing, man.
What I find quite ironic out of all of this is that since we've leaving the EU now, it's in some cases easier for people from the Middle Eastern countries and our countries to come over. What it has done is put a blockade for the people from Europe. So when we ask these people who voted for Brexit, some of these people, and I'm not saying all, but some people, if you ask them, what an immigrant looks like, they'll say brown. So their assumption was that they block people like us from coming in, but in actuality, it's stop the people from Eastern European countries and European countries from coming in.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think one thing people need to understand is if you actually look at the trend of where these refugees are coming from, they're all, unfortunately, they're from Muslim majority countries, but they're also coming from countries that have been intervened, like there's been intervention from Western powers. And essentially, like if you look at Libya is a country which has fallen into lawlessness. Why? Because if you look at the American and British forces going in, you know, Libya, there's no government, nothing. If you look at Syria, if you look at Iraq, if you look at these countries where these refugees are coming from, you know what I mean? Like, and they're coming to country, you know, these countries are the countries that essentially destroyed them, and now they're complaining about, oh, these refugees have turned up. What do you expect? They're trying to escape their lives that you've kind of ruined,
but it's always, if you were to say that to someone, then they'd go, it's in the past, we didn't have a control over that. But the ideas that you spew and whatnot still reek of that.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's true because there's also this idea that Islamophobia, like, it started on the 12th of September 2001, and that's not true. And you talk about the past and stuff. I think that's another thing that people need to understand, that Islamophobia is a very old concept. Like, even if right now we're just talking about the media. If you look in 1996, there was no real, like, terrorism was probably growing, but it wasn't like as a lot of these media lobbies say, Islam is terrorism. It wasn't really. It was more in like countries like Germany.
Exactly. I think that the best way of looking at, we're talking about, attacks and the media, and the fact that this has always been an issue. Each of these things are just catalysts that add to it and make it worse. But it's always been there.
Yeah,
it's always been there.
It's always been there, because if you look at even in the New York Times in 1996, they had a headline saying that seeing green, the red menace is gone, but here is Islam. They're saying that now communism is gone. Our new target is Islam. We have to worry about the Muslims
back to that point of there always needs to be someone to hate on. For someone's agenda to work and for them to remain in power, they have to divert attention to other people, and they have to have a reason for some insane people to back them, really.
Yeah, this is the thing, I think, because it's always having that scapegoat, and it's also like we talk about how there's this certain idea of what a Muslim looks like, this media interpretation. And the funny thing is, if you like, we're gonna go on to some of the big events happening in society now, but if you look in the last 30-40 years, typically in the 90s, if you look at one of the biggest genocides since the Holocaust was in Srebrenica. That wasn't brown Arabs, that was white Europeans, but they happen to be Muslim. So it just goes. But they don't talk about this, by the way.
I know.
We don't hear it. We at school we hear about the Holocaust, and we have to hear about the Holocaust. By the way, we need to know about these things, but unfortunately, we never hear about Srebrenica. We never hear about the barbaric things that the Serbian dictate in Yugoslavia. We don't hear about it.
Again, back to these all flows back into the same ideas that we spoke about at the beginning.
It's
crazy, go back to agendas. Who controls what's taught in schools? Government. Yeah. And of course they're gonna want to spew a lot more layered, message, so they're not going to teach certain things.
Exactly. It's very nuanced, isn't it? It's not. You can't. It's a sort of thing where I think it's got to such a degree, like it's so layered to the point where you can't put your finger to it. There's so many aspects. Like Islamophobia, I think this is something we need to talk about.
It's an absolute. It's a web, isn't it? Really. And it's a web. There's no, unlike a web, there's no beginning. You can't trace the beginning. You can't find it. It's never ending, constantly expanding, and you don't want it to.
Yeah.
It shouldn't exist. Full stop.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And we talked about some of the events, and I think we'll start talking about one of the major events that's happening right now in our society, which is China. In China, bro, there's 1 million Uyghur Muslims who are ethnically Turkic, but they're religiously Muslim, who are being held in concentration camps, or according to the Chinese government, re-education
I mean,
centers.
first of all, re-education. I mean, what's happened to freedom of speech, freedom of belief? What are you educating?
Yeah,
It baffles me. It makes no
that's the
sense.
thing. This is the thing that I don't get. I think one thing is with China is that they've always kind of suppressed religion anyway. Because if you look in historically, like in Tibet, the Dalai Lama is still in exile because of that. So I think it's unfortunate. It's very sad to see that our Muslim brothers and sisters are being so badly treated. But I think unfortunately, the Chinese government, if I say government
Yeah.
like very loosely, um, I think unfortunately this would be happening to any major ethnic minority, because China's got a bad history of ethnic minorities, like all the way back to Mao Zedong and before that probably. But it's crazy, man. Like 1 million people approximate, and that's just that's just in these concentration camps. There's a lot more going on in China
Totally.
that we're not being told.
If it's taking it back to the idea of being a child and a parent, yeah. If you view the government as a parent and all of its civilians as children, then they're going to want to follow the example that's set by the government, partly out of fear, but then there's those who are loyal, if you will. And if that example is set, then they're going to follow it. So obviously, we're only seeing those in those camps, but then think about the amount of hatred in schools at the youngers, and it's not a nice idea.
Yeah, because if you actually look at what's going on in these camps, what they've done is it is everything. If you look at organizations like Amnesty International and other organizations who've like created like a criteria for what a genocide is, they're ticking every box. Like they've a lot of things they've done. For example, they've sterilized women so they can't give birth. What they've done is if you look at the children, they've separated them from their parents. They put them in these classes, and they teach them communist ideas and make them sing communist songs. It's crazy.
It's messed up. And it doesn't matter what your belief is. It's messed up to force and oppress people like that. It's not right. And the sad thing is that the media obviously will not report on it. And, to find this kind of stuff, you have to delve onto sites like Twitter and look for people who are actively going out of their way to make sure that they're reporting on this kind of stuff.
And this is the thing. If you look on Twitter and the people who are reporting, and people like CJ Werleman, Khalid Beydoun, shout out to them, because those people are doing amazing things. And what happens if you actually look at them, and when they're talking about these issues, they get lambasted by these so-called Muslim critics, and we see them as Islamophobes anyway, and they are Islamophobes. And it's crazy. Like when you're standing up for something. And it's crazy that by you standing up for something, like forget if you're an Islamophobe or if you're just against religion or if you're an atheist, on a moral basis, this is just wrong. So I don't get it. It's incredible.
It's properly wrong. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But this all goes back to the media as well. That this will never be taught in schools. It will probably never be realized by any historians.
It's not even being realized by people in China. If you actually look in China, there's been a lot of times where people in China aren't even aware about it. It's not talked about in China. If you actually go into main cities like Shanghai, like Beijing, like Guangzhou, if you actually ask some of the people, Han Chinese people, they'll tell you, Uyghur Muslims, what's happening? Uyghur Muslims, they don't know what's happening.
Yeah, messed up. Very messed up.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. We're very messed up. And I think, unfortunately, subhanAllah, we're going to have to have faith in our subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if you look at this from a historical perspective, it doesn't seem like it's...
No, it doesn't seem like that. And just, pray for those people and have faith that, at the end of the day, this is one day we look to a future where something like this is never going to happen. But it's not forgotten, it's remembered, and people have made sure it doesn't happen again to any minority.
yeah, this is the thing. I think we always hear, "Oh, it will never happen again." You know, after the Holocaust, people said
Hmm.
this will never happen again, and granted,
Yeah,
40 years ago it
yeah.
happens again. You know, so I think people need to start actually putting their money where their mouth
Exactly,
is, isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah, moving on from China,
Hmm.
India. India, I think that's probably not as much as China, but I think that's been in the news a bit more than what's going on in Xinjiang. If you look at, you talked about, has always been going on. I think since partition,
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
think it
no,
kind of ramped
definitely.
up a
Yeah,
bit.
that was a big pivotal point, really.
Yeah, I think yeah, because we both have like grandparents who've gone through that, and their stories and stuff is crazy, isn't
Hmm.
it? But I think this is if you look at the what is going on in India right now, I'm a student of history, so for me, I look back at what went on with Nazi Germany and very like similar in terms of if you look at what happened, you had the Kristallnacht,
Yep,
the
yep.
pogroms against the Jews. Same thing happened a couple months ago in Delhi, where mobs of Hindutva nationalists they went out into the streets of Delhi and they just burning houses, attacking
Yeah,
kids, women, beating up men. And one thing I've noticed is it's never one on one. It's always 20
yeah,
on
no,
1, 30 on 1.
exactly. It's see, this kind of stuff just makes you speechless, doesn't it?
It does because there's no sense of
It's not.
humanity
There's no
at all.
forgiveness or no mercy towards anyone else. It's just a bit broken, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. But I think one we've talked a lot about catalyst today, and I think one particular catalyst in this kind of this inferno in India of anti-Muslim bigotry is the main party, the
Yep.
BJP or Bharatiya Janata Party,
Yeah.
led by Modi, Narendra
I mean, you
Modi,
don't
a very
you don't even have
the
to be clued
Chaiwala.
up on this kind of stuff to know that name now. You know, it is bonkers.
It's crazy. Like, yeah, he went to America, right? And what was it, Howdy Modi? They had like this whole
Oh,
event, like
do you know
Howdy
what? There you
Modi and
go,
stuff.
linking
It's
two
mad.
countries in it. Is
It's
I mean the
incredible.
welcome some of them gave Trump when he came over. That was
Yeah,
mind blowing. They
man.
were cheering and worshipping him.
The two idiot, the
Yeah,
two idiots,
just
isn't it?
yeah,
It's crazy, man. Yeah, but I think Modi, man, he gives me. If you look at it, if you compare him with like a
oh,
historical
he's
leader, he
scary.
definitely
Yeah,
links with Hitler. Because if you look at this is the thing, I think we talked about Trump earlier, and if you were to compare the two, I think one thing that I've noticed is Donald Trump. I think he's more of a
yep,
superficial Islamophobe. For me, he's only Islamophobe. In my opinion, he's still probably got these bigoted ideas anyway. But for me, I think he's an Islamophobe because
yeah,
it's
definitely.
convenient for him to be.
That's what's gained him half of his following base. That's what's keeping
Yeah,
him
of
going.
course.
That's what's realistically probably going to get him elected for another term. Yeah,
Oh, he'll get elected again, man. But anyway, like if you look at him, he has no policies, no ideas, nothing. It's just about getting himself power.
yeah. All
He's just a
talk, no game,
narcissist, if
really.
anything. Exactly. And if you look at Modi, like Narendra Modi, he's the opposite.
Yeah,
He's like an ideologue. This is like an ingrained, like it's sickening that he's got such a deep hatred for Muslims, and not just Muslims, like just ethnic minorities in India, like Christians,
it's just
Buddhists,
anything that opposes,
anyone
isn't
who's
it?
not Hindu. Yeah, it's mad. And the funny thing is, it's weird because India enjoyed quite a long time after partition of secularism,
Yeah,
and they had this tradition of secularism. And then as soon as, I think if anything, Hisham, that I think that acted as a veil
yeah.
for me. And I think he's just come now, and I think he's just pulled the veil off, and he's shown, and he's exposed to the world what is really going on. And it's
Yeah,
I just found out like the oppressors will never win,
it,
but
it's
if you
going
look at what's happening,
it's going back to
it's
that
so
idea of
sinister.
the government and people in charge being role models, especially if you're
Mhm.
experiencing stupid amounts of population growth, especially in countries like India. And if those people are born into those regimes,
Yeah.
then they're not going to know anything else other than those regimes.
Yeah, I think that's the sad thing to see, that because India is quite a young population as well, isn't it? So if you look at the next generation, because for me, I think India's at the start of its road to genocide for me.
It's all dependent on who's in charge,
So
really, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't see Modi going anywhere, because the funny thing is, in India, it's a sort of thing where if you look at, it's not like Pakistan, although there's more Muslims in India than Pakistan. It's not like so densely populated. If you look at the population of the Muslims, is very sparse. Like they're all over the place. So there's no way of them kind of uniting.
But I mean, you hope that there's no need to unite for anything. If you understand what I mean, obviously unity.
That's the thing, man.
You know what I mean? Every day, but
I think we need to be united anyway, but there shouldn't be united. You shouldn't have to unite
in defense. In defense, yeah.
I think, is that what you mean? Yeah.
There shouldn't be a need for that.
Yeah. I think this is also because if you look at if you even look at the makeup of the government, like they have to. Unfortunately, a lot of Muslims have to. They've only really. It's like in America, in the sense of disenfranchisement. There's only two parties to vote for. You either vote for the National Congress Party or you vote for the BJP. And the BJP is like the first party in India's democratic history to have a majority. So if essentially
it's one way or another, really, isn't it? And if you vote one way, you're getting it, and if you vote the other way, you're still going to get that other option. Let's be realistic.
Exactly. If you vote one way, you're going to get it in a very covert way of Islamophobic abuse. If you get it another way,
it's like having a checkbox and saying yes and yes. You know what I mean? Two options, but they're the same thing.
Yeah.
It's false freedom, isn't it?
It's crazy, man. Yeah, it's false freedom, but it's like these governments, man, like these bigoted governments are so like, if you actually read up on it, and if you actually read it, so they have no policy, which is astounding to me. There's no policy. If you look at India, like, I actually don't get it. Why would you vote for the BJP? Like, not forget even what obviously I'm not saying forget what they're doing, but like if you take away what they're doing from the Muslims, if you actually look at their output, like what they're doing for the economy, India's economy is like.
I mean, when you compare it to a lot of other countries, right, you know, at similar development points, they're being overtaken big time.
Yeah, and India was poised to be like the next world
following
power.
in China's footsteps, but that's not happened.
Oh, 100%.
There's so much untapped potential that's just been left, really.
Yeah, because if you look at it, it's almost as if everything is going into this almost Islamophobic and bigoted economy. Everything is going, the propaganda, everything's kind of going into this.
Yeah.
Which is mind-boggling. But there was one thing that really caught my eye, was the Citizenship Amendment Act. Don't know if you familiar with that?
Oh, sorry, say that again. You just cut out.
Oh, did I cut out? Yeah. So the Citizenship Amendment Act, bro, it was in the state of Assam in India. So what they did was they went and they made people, so if you couldn't like prove your citizenship, they make you stateless. Now, in countries like India, in the subcontinent, quite third world countries essentially, if you're poor, you ain't gonna have no papers. They're like a lot of people, my family, they ain't gonna birth certificate, nothing, because they're poor. They're poor. Exactly. They can't afford it. You know what I mean? That's unfortunate. You know what I mean? And it led to 1.9 million people, majority Muslim, being stateless.
Yeah, people in power, isn't it? They're obviously the rich ones. They want to root out the people that they don't want. They know that there's a majority of people who oppose them who fit in that class. So rid of them, innit?
Yeah, and that's the thing, because I think what they've done is, I think once you got 1.9 million people stateless, it's a lot easier to get rid of them, because there's no one fighting their corner anymore. You know what I mean? They can't, because essentially they don't exist. They don't exist on any papers, nothing. You know, you tend to have that stereotype of like, oh, I'm just a number on a piece of
Yeah,
paper. They're not even that anymore. They're lower than that. So it's crazy. Like it's
it's
incredible what's happening.
it's kind of, if you take a battle, but then kind of finding ways to cheat yourself around it. If we have an enemy, but let's just weed them all out and take them out from the inside with political laws and rubbish.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, if you look at all this rubbish that they're spewing, like India, there's one phenomenon like cow lynchings, and obviously the cow's a sacred animal in Hinduism. But if you actually look at, India is one of the highest exporters of beef in the world, and Muslims and Christians are getting essentially they're being like lynched on the streets of Delhi and main cities just eating beef, whilst your country's
again double standards, isn't it?
It's double standards, and that's one thing I've noticed with anyone who's Islamophobic. It doesn't have to be countries, anyone. There's always a double standard.
Yeah. Broken political systems, broken regimes, the whole lot.
Yeah. It's just incredible, isn't it? And the funny thing is, we've talked about we talked about America, we've talked about China, we've talked about India, and I think one thing that there's been a general there's been a trend, there's been a consistency, actually is better word. There's been consistency in the idea that this is happening in all forms of politics. Like, it's not just your Western liberal democracy, it's in your communist-esque whatever the hell you want to call China.
There's no word for
system. I don't know what to call
There's no word for it.
There's no word for it. There's no word for it. You know, India's so-called democracy, it's happening everywhere. In every political system. And although a lot of these constitutions state, oh, you have the right to your religion, your faith, this sort of stuff, is still happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, you'd expect this rampant Islamophobia to like kind of slow down with COVID-19, but if anything, it's kind of increased.
When people get bored, people like to. This is what people do, isn't it? You know, they don't have they don't really have a cause for spewing hatred, but you'll see a post with someone praying or something, and then someone will put something underneath and incite hate just for the fun of it.
Yeah. If you look in this country, what's funny is it's like a lot of these Islamophobes are like they'll be cussing Muslim women and stuff, saying his hijab, like Boris said, letterbox.
Idiot.
Don't get me onto him. I'm in a good mood, man. Like, but what's it called? Like, if you look at these Islamophobes, the way they describe Muslim women, and the funny thing is, they're standing outside every Thursday clapping for these doctors. They don't understand that most of the doctors who passed away are Muslim. They won't talk about
of minorities, really, isn't it? If you look at the I think who was it? Some people I think it might have been NHS. They put out pictures, don't they, of the people who have passed away. And
most of the
vast majority are minorities, really.
It's crazy, man. Yeah, because I remember at the start of the lockdown, there were two doctors who died, and it was I think one of the names of the Muslim name was Arima Hussain. May Allah grant her Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. And she passed away as she's a doctor. And there was a white woman who was a doctor, and I can't remember her name for the life of me. They both died on the same day. Fighting.
Let me guess, one got media coverage, the other didn't.
And the funny thing is, they didn't even they had a whole article, they had like a whole thing on Sky News, everything. They didn't even mention Arima's thing. They didn't even give her a picture, nothing. They said loads of doctors have died. Yeah. Typically this woman. They didn't even talk about them, man.
Well, I mean, even when I know you said you're in a good mood, but I'm just gonna have to go on to it. When
it's fine, bro.
Who shall not be named came out of hospital. Obviously, no, you don't want to incite hatred against anyone. Glad that he's had a child and everything, and he's come out safe. Of course. And that's good. But when he came out, that statement that he made, and he talked about people and the Italian women and all these other people who were around him from different faiths and different countries and immigrants and whatnot, all helping him and staying by his bed because he's prime minister. There was I felt a glimmer of hope. Like maybe this man's going to change.
That's
Yeah,
yeah. I remember
maybe
you were
he's
telling me,
had a
man.
near death
You were telling me
experience and his ways have changed. But so far, this man's dipped, and
he's had an epiphany.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
he's had an
but that doesn't
epiphany.
seem to be the case,
I don't know,
unfortunately.
man.
But there was an element of that
Unfortunately, man.
hope.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. I think he came out and then he had to I think kind of realize, came down back to earth, and he was like, I kind
Or
of have to keep my
maybe
supporters
not
still
even
happy.
that. Maybe this is that man's view. You know, he did have an epiphany, and his views have changed. But at the end of the day, you know,
Maybe.
the party he's a part of won't allow him to, change his view, because they know that at the end of the day, he's a figurehead for them, really, isn't he? And
No, he is.
You know, he's power hungry. Of course, he wants to be prime minister. Of course, he wants to sit in 10 Downing Street. He always has, always will want to. And he knows that if he changes his view, then that's it. He's gone.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's the thing. I think we do live in a society where we talked about earlier, like people don't really think for themselves anymore. But also, I think when you believe in something, it's like just because you're in the minority makes this idea of if you're in the minority, you're wrong. There's no like forget truth, forget everything. They just if there's a majority saying something, then you're wrong just because 20 people got their hands up. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no sense of actual like.
Yeah, there was a psychologist kind of experiment. I remember my mum showing it to me, where people like you had 3 actors in the room, and you put them in the room, and then bring one unknown person in, and the actors have been told to stay stood up and sit down whenever they hear a horn go off. And the one person comes in and they conform to it and they start copying what the people are doing. And it's the same principle with media, isn't it? If you see a comment section and 99% of the comments are inciting hatred, then your mind is going to be biased towards trying to incite that hatred.
Yeah, and then there's also the point where it's like you don't want to get lambasted.
Keep quiet,
so
keep quiet, or you change your views.
You keep quiet. Yeah, and I think we're talking about keep quiet. I think that leads us on nicely, Hishaam. I think when it's quickly before we end, I kind of wanted to touch upon like how we can move on, how we can resolve these issues. Do you see not necessarily in issues like China and India? I think they're much more deeper and they're much more led in terms of
definitely
just, finding a solution. Based on a local level, on a ground level, how do you think we can combat
I think even what we've been trying to do at our school is ensuring that the community itself within that school is taught, and you work from ground up, because children are the future. No two ways about that. So if we're giving assemblies and teaching these kids about this and that and normalizing things like fasting and Eid and all this kind of bits and bobs, I'm talking about for every single
just little things, isn't it?
Yeah, because that's where we start. That's where the issue begins and it evolves. So if you catch it early and you fix it and you amend it, then it's better. Schools are the place to fix things. What about with you? Where would you think, point, to start?
How I think, for me, I think I'm a bit more. I think I'm not as nice as you in that sense, because I think for me, a lot of the time, if someone's ignorant, they're gonna be ignorant, innit? So for me, I think as Muslims, we need to. I think before we look at other people, I think we need to look at ourselves, maybe, because for me, one thing that I've always found is we as Muslims and the people who are ethnic minorities anyway in general, we don't have the same luxury as a white guy living in Oxfordshire or Cambridgeshire. Like they'll have luxury, like they can do certain things. Like they can behave a certain way and they'll have a second chance. Or like for example, if a white guy does something wrong, that particular white man has done something wrong.
Yeah.
He's culpable for what he's done. If you or I was to do something, then these Muslims, look at these Muslims, why all these Muslims like that? We haven't got the luxury of our own, like, of being judged.
Yeah, we're a collective. We're seen as a collective.
Like ourselves. We're a collective. We're always seen as a collective. It's like so for me, we need to be a bit more careful. And even in a school setting, if you go to a school where majority white and you've got a group of Muslims who may not be behaving in the best way, then for the majority, that's their only experience of what Muslims are, because maybe they live in a majority white Christian neighborhood or white whatever neighborhood. So I think we need to kind of be reflective on our job as well, because if we're not showing our true like iman, our faith, then are we doing our jobs correctly? Are we if we're not, like, Muslims, as Muslims, we need to, like, manners. I always say it, man. Manners is the best form of dawah, bro. It's the best form of like showing people what Muslims are really like. And if we're not doing that, are we really doing our jobs?
This is a kind of philosophical stuff that you've got to be thinking about. Obviously we can put blame on other people, but you can't deny we're part of the problem as well. We've got to make sure that we're giving off the correct example and showing people the true us, and not give them reason to hate. If we do that, then yes, we can put blame on other people. But it's a mix of a number of things, but a mix of the two things that we've just said can definitely help the problem 100%.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And let's just hope by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that what's happening in the world right now,
inshallah,
come to a halt, inshallah. But Hishaam, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. We need to get you on more often, because it's a pleasure, man. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters, for tuning into today's Wahda podcast. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.